Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem on my Blitz game number 825. I had the white pieces and started with d4. Opponent goes d4, so I go for the Queen's Gambit, and he goes for the Slav defense. Queen's Gambit declined. So I play knight f3, the main move. It keeps control over this e5 square, stops pawn to e5 for the moment. He goes knight f6, and now I go e3. See, e3 is actually the second choice here. You can play knight c3, that's the main way to play. But black can grab here after knight to c3 and later defend the pawn with b5 and then push those pawns forward. It's kind of an annoying line called the note boom variation, and so I tend to avoid it just by playing e3. It leads to something simpler and that I know how to deal with. I guess you can learn to play against those positions. It's not bad, but you do have to learn it. Let's see, so black here selects e6. There's lots of choices. Usually the idea in playing the Slav is to get this bishop out. So you see bishop f5 and bishop g4 are top choices in this position, but he goes for the semi-Slav with e6. So now I go knight c3. I'm ready to take back the pawn with the bishop if he grabs it. And he goes bishop d6. This is a rare move. But there doesn't seem to be anything great that I can do here to exploit it. I mean, it's a fine developing move, so black hasn't really done anything wrong yet. Go bishop d3, and he goes knight bd7. And if I went queen c2 here, we would transpose back into what's called an anti-Moran variation. So that would be a way of getting back into main lines. I castled here, which is also a good move just in this position. It is possible to play e4 here, maybe something I should have considered, but it does not lead to a big edge for, let's see, did I follow that a little bit? Yeah, I did. It doesn't lead to a huge edge for white or anything, but it is an interesting possibility. You play e4, the main line goes like this. He takes, takes, bishop takes, and then knight to f6 is how, as black, that's the way I normally play it. You could also try e5 here, I guess. But I've seen this position a lot as white as well. Kick the bishop back, and now my idea is to bring the queen up here and set up a battery. If he just castles, let's see, he can throw in bishop b4 check to disrupt things. But anyway, that's a position that's I've found to be pretty comfortable for white. So I could have gone for that e4 move here. Anyway, I just castled. It does get rid of some of those disruptive checks, so there's some point to castling here, and it's a fine move as well. And then black should probably just castle. That would lead to pretty normal play. Instead, he went e5 here, and so it's a bit risky for black to open up the center, but it doesn't seem to be a huge disadvantage. So c takes d5 is apparently better in the chess engine in the opening book. Well, there's only one line in the opening book here, but it does seem to be some slight edge to white after I play e4 here. Now I would not have thought to play e4 in that position. This is kind of a crazy looking position, isn't it, with all those pawns confronting each other in the center. I tend to avoid things like that just because I can't stand looking at them. They make my head explode. So, but apparently that would be the best way for white to try and get some kind of edge and exploit this e5 move. I played c takes, and this leads to an okay position, but nothing special. And yeah, we're just out of the opening book after that. So we get these normal exchanges here, and then right here, yeah, I guess taking is okay. He took back with the knight. It's right here. I had, originally planned to just keep taking, but I was thinking at this point that might be sort of a dry position. Well, let's just put those moves on. If I had taken, you would probably take back with the queen, and I could play something like queen c2. I need to move the rook out of the way still, but before I can move the b pawn. But actually, with the queen here, I could just move the bishop out directly, and I have this battery here, so maybe that'll slow down his castling for a move or two. Well, black has ideas. Black has a fine active position as well, and it's kind of cleared out. So it's a bit of a simple position in a way. Not that I necessarily would be able to easily play it, but I was looking for something with a little more interest in it. So I played this knight e4 move, but apparently this is just not as good. And let's see, if black wants to get the most out of this position, Chess Engine is recommending black should just castle here, and I might play something like a3 to keep his knight out of these squares. He could go queen e7, defending his bishop, which was loose there. I could go queen c2 again, and it gives a slight edge to black in this position. Black got castled without any trouble. There's maybe a threat here, but that can be dealt with. In fact, he can just play h6, you know, his pieces are out. The bishop is not going to be any trouble to develop, and actually I have a little bit of trouble to unwind. This bishop, I guess, doesn't have so many squares to go to with the knight and the bishop covering those squares. And the rook has to move before I can push the b pawn forward to get some action going on the queen side. So maybe my counterplay is a little bit slower. Maybe black can look to do something active here. Maybe bishop to f5 would be a good idea in this position. But anyway, after I played knight e4, he went bishop f5 immediately. And, you know, this leaves me with some possibilities here. I tried to find, you know, that bishop is loose there, so I tried to find some discovered attack here that would win something. I can move the knight with check and win the bishop potentially. But if I go here, the queen takes back, defending the bishop. And if I go here, he can take with the bishop. I take his bishop. It doesn't seem to gain a whole lot. In the end, I settled on just going for knight c5, and actually I looked at it with the Chess Engine. It didn't find anything better either, so it thought knight c5 was actually the best move there. So interestingly, let's see, he took, and then here's the big mistake. Let's see, you know, knight e4 was a slight mistake, I guess. You can call that an inaccuracy, but I was kind of doing it on purpose to try and get an interesting position. But this move is an actual mistake since it overlooks a tactic. I played queen takes d3 instead of knight takes d3. I mean, knight takes d3 is a reasonable move. And if the bishop drops back to avoid being traded, I can play e4 here, kicking the knight, and it seems like I have a good position here. I've got activity, and he still needs to castle. And my development is easier now that I get in this e4 move. So that would be a fine way to play. Queen takes d3. I was just thinking to activate my queen and leave this knight on an active square, because it is actually hitting a loose pawn over here. But it just falls into this tactic. Now the interesting thing is that this the way he played it is not necessarily the best way. So as I was looking at other ideas here, I mean, he could have tried queen d6 immediately, and this leads to some crazy complications. It looks like it ought to simply win a pawn because it's kind of a double attack, but I'm attacking a pawn, so I can take here, he can take here with check, and then he can come over here defending his bishop and threatening some sort of horrible discovered attack. But let's see, let's back up. Were there other moves there? Yeah, I don't know. He might get into trouble if he tries to defend the bishop in any other way. So, you know, if the... oh, maybe the queen could also drop back to c7. And then I could try and trap the bishop. But if he retreats the bishop, of course, his queen is hanging. So it's a little tricky for black to find a move. But queen h6 runs into a problem with e4, which is a double attack, hitting his queen and hitting this knight. Well, the pawn is hitting the knight, the bishop is hitting the queen. But the game is not over yet. He has knight f4 here. I just thought this was an interesting tactical sequence. Nobody would discover this in a rapid game, at least not at my level. But the Chess Engine has no trouble finding this, hitting the queen. So queen comes over here, and that's to stop this discovered attack, because the knight was blocking my attack on the queen. There's this big discovered attack problem once again. So so he can take my queen now, and I can take his queen, and he can retreat the bishop. And let's see, I can retreat my bishop, and he can save his knight. Notice the knight is supported by the bishop there, and let's see, and I can bring a rook out, hitting a pawn, and a slight edge to white in this position after all of that. The material is actually even, but my pieces are a little better placed, and his pawns are a little weaker with these split pawns on the queen side. So that queen d6 tactic doesn't work, I guess. The tactic, or the way the chess engine wants to play this, is actually just to go queen e7, protecting the bishop, hitting the knight, and just gaining a tempo. It also protects the pawn over here. Gains a tempo by hitting the knight and just prepares to castle. So that would be the simple way to play. Bishop takes h2 check. This tactic actually does work. I take, he comes here with check, I go back, and he takes the knight. And this is how the game went. But in this position, actually, I have a good move in e4. And so even though I'm down a pawn, it actually thinks that that I am doing fine after, say, knight can go back to c7 or to f6, and I can play bishop to e3 and gain a tempo on the queen. And it seems like this is about an even position. He still hasn't castled, although I can't really stop him from castling in this position. But he's got to move his queen, and so I'm gaining some tempos and I'm getting active pieces. So I have enough compensation for the pawn that the chess engine rates it even. One other interesting line I found here was after e4, he might have been tempted to play knight b4, hitting my queen. And, you know, it looks like coming into c2 might be an annoying threat. But after queen to g3, I'm exploiting the fact that he hasn't castled, hitting that g-pawn. If he plays g6, I can actually play a3, kicking the knight. And now if he drops into c4, he gets into real big trouble. So this is an interesting line. I go b4, hitting the queen. So he's hitting my rook, but I'm hitting his queen. And if the queen moves to defend the knight, there's not too many squares that defend it. And if he goes there, then this check. Now we see the problem of leaving the king in the center. Also hits the rook over there. And yeah, and black is in trouble. Let's see. After e4, knight b4, queen g3, g6, a3, the knight has to go back to a6. And so this is a position where the material, he's still a pawn up, but, well, you know, I've got the bishop coming out to this square. I can keep him from castling for a long time, and looks pretty good for white. So definite compensation. So that's an advantage to white after that. The other line, it's just equal. I developed, which is reasonable, but maybe not the strongest move here. It gives him time to castle. I mean, I do get a tempo on his queen. He plays queen d6, which I played a3 first. I didn't want him getting this knight b4 move in. But I wondered about this move e4. So there is, I looked at it later with the chess engine, e4 is not winning. Black has a defense here, and I didn't put the answer up, but this is your chance. See if you can spot the saving move for black in this position. I mean, it looks like I'm just going to take the knight, because if he moves it, I'll grab the queen. So what's the answer for black here? Okay, pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. The thing is, black has one move, queen g6, which unpins the knight and pins the pawn simultaneously. I can't take the knight because my queen is loose. So my queen is not defended either, and so the counterpin saves the knight. So he's okay after e4. So a3 here was actually a fine move, and he went rook a to d8, defending his queen now. So now e4 does not threaten the queen, but it does threaten the tactic that I played in the game. So he played knight f6, and knight f6 is actually the losing move. He had a much better move. Well, first, in the first place, he still has queen g6, pinning that pawn, and that should be fine for black. But he has a move where he comes out better. So here's another tactics quiz for you. Can you spot the best move for black in this position? Okay, pause the video if you want time to think about it. I'm going to give the answer away now. It is knight to f4. And now, once again, the problem is that my queen is loose, and it's hanging here. And let's see, if I just move the queen out of the way, the bishop is hanging. So really, I'm forced to trade. And here's the trick. The trick is he can throw in this knight e2 check before taking back my queen. And then he takes back. And now this is trouble. And in fact, I can't even play this move to do the skewer and try and win an exchange. You know, and he's going to win an exchange, but he's going to win much more in this position because he has a mate. So I'm just going to lose material here. I have no really great move here. Let's see, mate is threatened. Oh, mate is not threatened at the moment because the bishop is guarding that square. So probably moving the rook is the thing to do. But I am in trouble in this situation. In any case, I guess after I move the rook, he can grab the bishop. So yeah, I guess I'll probably need to defend the bishop, but black is in the driver's seat there. So knight f4 was a nice move there. Let's see. So he went knight f6 instead of finding one of those defenses, and this one doesn't work because now I do get my tactic. And here I can play bishop b4 because this rook is no longer able to reach the square. Oh, well, and his knight isn't at e2 anyway, giving me that check. So anyway, he just loses the exchange here. He gets a pawn, and this is not a hopeless position. I mean, the advantage is to white here. White has the edge here, but black has 2 pawns for the exchange. He's got 3 on 2 over here and 3 on 2 over here, and should probably be able to hold this. Let's see. Oh, I went rook fd1. Okay, and but he needs to be a little bit more careful. He just kept playing quickly. Maybe he had sort of already given up, but at some point you really should pause and try and think. And you know, it's pretty simple here. You know, if he moves that knight, I'm going to penetrate to the second rank. So I was really expecting him to defend, and that is what he should do. I can try and get pressure like this, but he can bring his king over in time. Double here. And now eventually he'll be able to unwind by moving either this pawn or this pawn, either the b pawn or the f pawn, and then bringing the knight back to one of those squares to defend his rook. That would be the idea for him to unwind. Let's see, and I don't have too many ways of increasing the pressure. I can start pushing pawns or bringing my king towards the center. So anyway, he has time to get out of trouble, and there's still, you know, an edge to white here, but it's not a huge edge, not necessarily winning, and he could certainly try for tricks with a knight on the board. But anyway, he went knight e4, allowing me to penetrate to the 7th rank. And now his second overly quick move in a row. He should really defend the pawn. There's no reason to just start giving up pawns, because once those pawns are gone, he has nothing to speak of in compensation for the exchange. But instead he played rook to e8, so I just grabbed a pawn. Let's see, he moved the a pawn, grabbed the c pawn, and then he resigned. Anyway, it was a short game, but I thought kind of cute. Some interesting tactics, and I will see you guys later.